Satsang of the Great Mothers. February 16, 2019. Part 1. I need someone next to me. A brother. Jean-Luc, why do you need someone next to you? Simply because when people, like the brothers and sisters here who are talking, they will come and talk here and sit down, before leaving. Good. So, this morning, for those who are listening and to relay the program, a priori, of the day, I no longer dare to say, live, so this morning, we have this satsang that I called Mothers, because it will be filled not by my words most often, but by those who are here for the moment, who will be able to express what happened last night and what you experienced, that we all lived with the first dream seeding codes, delivered by the whales. We will have, this afternoon at 4 p.m., Eba. And we will end it around 6 p.m. with Feham, who will continue to sow the original codes of creation and will specify, I think, in his own way, what is happening. During this celebration, I remind you that this is the penultimate day of the celebration, the last day is tomorrow, and it will therefore take place on the water in Tarifak, with the representatives of the cetaceans who will be there. I remind you that the information that Feham gave me at the very first unexpected meeting was that in February, whether or not there was physical presence, what was delivered was the white whale code, that is, the first whale, of course, which is also the last one. This white whale that was present in Australia a short time ago, which was seen, of course, in June 2018 in Israel, what the Hebrew people called the coming of the Messiah, who is in fact only the Antichrist, of course, and all this is becoming more and more apparent. Moreover, everything you have all experienced here and everywhere, not just here, confirms, if you will, what is happening, that is, returning to the first breath of creation, which is, I remind you, outside time and space. That's time zero. So, there is indeed a collective installation of zero time that has been started, initiated and accomplished by the celebration of the four living ones. I am waiting for everyone to settle in and, of course, you're all invited, here present, the others in writing, you sent me what you have experienced, I will publish it, of course, for you. So while everyone is settling in and know her, that Liza, will join us soon and we'll let you speak, won't we? Don't you? So, Issa, where is she? So, there's no one left all of a sudden. Well, so for those who didn't follow last night, I had spent the morning explaining Agape network resonance in the form of 3-in-1. Of course, many brothers and sisters have done it on different continents, across different continents, the results speak for themselves. They will express it themselves if they want to express it, and you have seen that yesterday, the Agape resonance network that we had made without posture, without gesture, without technique, simply by being in the embracing without asking anything, without doing anything, without even mentioning the word Agape, was enough to trigger what was triggered. Remember that we didn't trigger it, we just follow the scenario, the script that has already been written forever. This is how we find time zero, and this is how we reinstall ourselves in those tears and joy that allow the fusion of being and non-being through the person. You therefore find, ladies, of course, the rape of the sacred feminine and, above all, beyond the suffering as expressed by Severing in her text yesterday, beyond the suffering of men and women, there is mutual forgiveness, not between individuals, of course, but at the level of the archetypes of the first man-woman duality, that is, of the first polarization. This is how, of course, you actualize in the flesh and, as I told you last night, in the brain, since yesterday there were changes in the neural circuits, it is not energy, it is not vibration, it is directly at the cellular level. You rewrite connections that had disappeared, you find the meaning and experience of zero time at the cellular level, the first moment of creation unfolds and, at that moment, you realize that ultimately there was never a man or a woman, that all this belongs to history and is therefore never eternal. You merge the masculine and the sacred feminine, you complete the dynamics of the collective interdimensional mo by this time, since it is indeed a collective mechanism that began with the celebration of the four living ones and, at that moment, of course, well, you're free. through tears of gratitude, through suffering, through joy, you discover that beyond this intensity that is not over, it is the 16th, it goes until tomorrow evening, so the 18th is a new day. Of course, why the 18th? There are explanations, but it is important today that, whatever the explanations, this discovery be made anew, in each of you, in different ways, of course, but will lead to the same conclusion, that is, to this fusion in white heaven, to this round of geneticist mothers and the woman who includes this time the man, as well as the man, he includes the woman, to discover the primordial androgyne that is incarnated in our brain. I remind you that the primordial androgynous is the moment when the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine sacralize each other, in order to perform the miracle of only one thing, that is, prior to the first polarity, the first breath, and it is the seeding of the whale code, coupled with the verb of geneticist mothers, that allows this. So, but now I'm waiting for you to talk because I called it the mother's satsang, so I'm waiting. Come on, Marie Philo. Marie Philon. It was such a strong evening that it's hard for me to get it back, first because I've already forgotten a lot of things, so I can just tell you what I felt and what I still have left. When Jean-Luc started singing, this song that you all heard, well I followed it, I don't know why, I followed it, I answered what he was saying, and LD Marie came to snuggle up on my heart and there, what to tell you, everything has blossomed, everything has been revealed, it's impossible to know how far it goes, that's it. There you go. Thank you Marie Philo. Come on, don't hesitate. Once again, do not forget the power of resonance you have, since everyone recognizes themselves in you, through what you say, and that is what is most important. So, it is not a display of what is lived, it is a display of resonance that makes it possible to establish this collective, since now we can say it effectively, the celebration makes it possible to live what has been experienced by countless individuals, indeed, since May, but now, to bring all this together in the same round, if I can say so, in the same dance that is the initial dance and, indeed, from hour to hour, all night, it has been revealed for countless brothers and sisters. Of course, we also have men here who have experienced what happened last night, so I'll let you speak, you don't have to name yourself if you don't want to be recognized, but come on. We give the floor to a man on the surface. Brother, what can I say? I'm just going to share what I have, what I feel, what's going on there and what was experienced last night. I think everyone heard what Isabel went through last night. Last night, no. We are completely lost in time, in terms of benchmarks. Continues. Yes, then what actually comes to me is that, what I faced intimately, and last night especially, after the intensity of last night when I sang, there were many things, many different elements. There were the peoples of the earth and all that were with us, there were the whales, well, it was very strong. And last night, it's quite intimate what I'm going to share, I really saw the unipolarity in fact, in which humanity was immersed, a little, the snake, what we carry within us and which, finally, prevented the fusion in us of the masculine and the feminine. And in my space last night, I was with Jean-Luc and then our brother Sidja, and there was really this language that was there, which was a little some like yesterday's, but through music, and I saw all the construction that takes place within our human bodies, through birth, incarnation, and that is ancestrally connected to the first men, and that we drag, in fact. And we're breaking that chain. And I see that the light, our body of eternity, touches that part of the deep ancestral energy in us, which is linked to all the sexual problems we have experienced. We will seek energy from the outside and which generates rape and all these problems. Isabel will talk about it later, that's what she experienced yesterday. So we are in the process of absorbing, in fact, these endless cycles of feeding on the male and female outside. For my part, I perceive that form substantially within this flesh, which is the manifestation of that, and the light tells me to look, in fact, and it is a lot of recalibration within this temple, this body. And so, I feel that it is a moment of total intimacy where the human part for which there is an outsider, other humans, other friends, all this, which is therefore interdependent, is really called to dissolve into what we are, because in the end, we are all alone. We are all alone as the whole, and therefore, everything that perceives us as something else in a substantial way within this body, even in our habits, in our way, in our brain, all this is calibrated, and really invited to burn. And it is this last step that I feel is being taken, and we have been prepared by the whales, by the water, to allow us to have this space of sweetness in us, which then allows us to embrace the dragon that will really bring back the phoenix, in fact. So, this is really an important phase we are going through. There you go. Thank you to you. Well, then, we have, in a little while, the time for her to settle in. So I did have, as I told you earlier, I had to tell you, since it is something that is written in my memory, even if it is illusory, since you know very well that for many of you, you are discovering this founding myth of creation, you are going through it. As you know, I've always been a little bit ahead of this, because it's something I know from having lived it long before understood what it was, everything that was going on, I mean. So, it goes back well, I would say, more than 30 years, I'm already aware of that, but it didn't find any echo, not necessarily in me, but it had to wait until there was this diffusion of the good news, with the whale seeding codes, and not just the revelation of our eternity or the experience of the wide paradise that more and more of us are living. And the celebration allows that is, at the end of the Satsang, I will be able to tell you the story of creation. Because I was there, of course, and all this memory has always been present in me, even if I know that it is illusory. So I am not attached to it, but it was necessary to be joined by what I would call the female archetype, not at the level of archetypes that have been completely modified and transformed by what happened in this linearity, but now that the geneticist mothers are awake, of course, I will be able to tell you the story. And then, of course, this afternoon, to close this celebration that ends tomorrow on the water, Feham will deliver all the seeding codes that I continued to receive all night long, since apparently LD hurt me. I have some vague memories of it, but it's not serious, it's written in my brain and, of course, the neural connections, this time on the biological and anatomical level of the brain, were completed last night. That is, the alchemy of what was called the heart and the head, the small and the great crown, the fusion of the four living ones, is now active, which allows through the testimonies of some and others here and what I will bring to the end, or at a given moment, can only resonate in you. We have proof of this through countless testimonies of dreams that have been lived since yesterday that show me, and in addition, by having them written in my head tonight by Feham directly, will allow Feham tonight to sow all of them collectively, since the whale celebration song began long before the celebration of the four living ones, I believe. I no longer know, excuse me, I lose the notion of time completely, but during a last intervention by Feham, she had said that, moreover. So, all this is being realized, it is being lived, whether in dreams, in suffering, in joy, in tears, in visions, everything leads us to the same dance, in the same circle that is the initial moment of creation, of course. And as I said at the time that the book was closed, of course, we still had to join the Alpha and Omega. Alpha and Omega have joined forces, as I told you, time is linked to space by a constant called omega, and this equation, which makes it possible to explain both quantum and quantum entanglement, that time and space do not ultimately exist, is a reality that is imprinted through our biology. That is to say, it is the end of the dictatorship, or what is called the reptilian brain on habits, the sense of being an identity, doing things mechanically, habits, behaviors, reactions, all this not only has been seen before, but today directly proposes this space for solution. We saw it, for example, when I talk about technique without technique, there are some who must wonder why we still make gestures with hands. You saw it yesterday, we initiated a gate resonance network no longer between two individuals, but between three individuals. And what happened last night, we no longer had to put ourselves in a triangle, you didn't even have to think about agape, as I told you, but to replace it with embrace. This embrace, without questioning ourselves, without wondering what we are embrace, since in the end, we only embrace ourselves, because there is only us, for each of us, because there is no one there. And there, it is the space of resolution through this incredible joy, through these incredible tears, through this certainly illusory memory of geneticist mothers, but which makes it possible to reawaken what the location of consciousness is actually like with these somewhat violent words that are used to unlock something, in a way, to say that consciousness is a disease, but that it will never accept. And it obviously ends with these tears of genetics mothers, with this senseless joy that unfolds here and elsewhere, from everywhere. Because the testimonies, as you can imagine, have come from everywhere, from all continents since yesterday, and they are no longer just testimonies of the resurrection as we have had since May last year, or of states that are permanent states of grace that are our natural. Today it is unfolding with ease, the good news is being spread all over the world, as the whales had said, and now we are living it. So, it is a perpetual celebration, it is a celebration that is not only a celebration of creation, nor even of decreation, it is the celebration of life, which means that in each of us, beyond the dimension of burning sons of the sun, that is, of Christi, of Christ who has revealed himself, we reach, as we said yesterday, the Father, the Mother and the Son, all this in the same individual, through the same individual. We bring the three together in one in a collective way. This is what prefigures and announces the collective event. Once again, there is no date, once again it is at this moment, it is every minute, and it can only be revealed with more and more amplitude, more and more certainty, more and more tears, more and more joy, more and more forgiveness, in relation to all suffering, as Severing expressed it in her text yesterday, where we ultimately forgive ourselves to the man, we forgive ourselves to the woman, and at that moment, the primordial androgyne enters into action, not only on the level of energy, of vibration, but really in the flesh. The ascension takes place here, through the flesh. We have the total demonstration today, both by the experiences, from the seeding codes. Of course, many sisters had received these seeding codes, including Severing, many others, in Kathy's testimony yesterday, but since encounters with whales at the time left a feeling of emptiness and tearing, and all the women who received these songs, who received these codes, were not received at the time, because it was impossible. And now that the lighting is total, well, these codes are accepted and revealed by the genetics mothers, since we have all been in all roles, of course. When I say that Eba did not create anything, but he accompanied that creation, first of all in each of us, beyond any historical character. Now, as I have always said, I am nothing, and it is precisely because I am nothing that everything has been revealed. That is to say, humility, transparency, must be total, that is to say, even independently of you, wounds, unconscious resistances and all that is now swept away and allows us to touch directly the essence of life and no longer to be, of the individual, and to reveal this essence to the eyes of the world, that is, to establish it through the wide paradise, this fusion of consciousness, spirit-consciousness and the person, and reveals us to this beauty. That's why I used that beauty word. I have no merit because, in me, this reminiscence had already been inscribed for a very long time, and I must say even since I was a child, but obviously it could not appear outside until I was, in quotation marks, joined by the woman, and that is what is happening there, with this celebration. So all this is happening. I give the work back, as I said, to those who have experienced this in their flesh, in their spirit, in their soul and in this reminiscence, which is not an active memory. It is not a memory because I say that everything is an illusion, even the memories. It doesn't mean that you don't carry memories, it means that when you find them, you live that you are none of those things. And you live that beyond the genetics mothers, beyond the suffering, beyond Eba, beyond Feham, you're really and concretely this total perfection. And now, the embrace, since yesterday we replaced this word of agape by embrace, I will not go back on it, but all the people who tell me agape is unconditional love, I answer you, it is false. Agape, as Martin Luther King said in the quotations, agape is much more than that. It is much more than unconditional love. It is humility, it is simplicity, it is childhood, it is transparency, it is the four pillars, it is the way of innocence, it is the way of purity, of whiteness. Whatever the shadows, whatever the sufferings that we can still carry in fragments, they are swept away by tears and joy, which often, as you have seen through all the testimonies, this suffering reaches love, and it is through this that forgiveness, archetypal forgiveness, I would say, is made between man and woman. And of course, each individual lives it, and you will all live it without exception, not in years, but there, in those days that are there, every minute, from the moment you embrace, that is, from the moment you no longer even have to think about putting yourself in agape, since you are there. As soon as the technique without technique that I barely had time to reveal to you in the last 2 or 3 months is transcended immediately, and you realize that you no longer need anything. If you need nothing or no one, it is because you realize that the whole of creation is only you, through this body. The dreams, what you both experienced last night, here, everywhere, are only a total confirmation of that. So, for those who live nothing, simply embrace, do not look for agape, do not look for energy, nor vision, anything. All the brothers and sisters who testify, these testimonies, as I have just said, are not just a thirst for you or a testimony, but are really the effectiveness by the testimony of whatever it is, which will resonate in you now. So I'll give the floor to Issa. Issa. In fact, it's a little difficult to summarize everything, because for some time now everything has been scrolling, all the landmarks. I have the impression that all life, all the lives are in the process of to collide each other. Continued. To deploy to close permanently. So there is a lot of information coming in at the same time. So, I'll try to be a little clear, but in fact, it all started at the meeting, the first time we met the whales. I got out of the boat with a new feeling in the womb. I immediately told Elo, I don't know, there's something in the womb. And so, that was in December, and since then everything is unfolding from the womb and up to the consciousness, and unfolding up to, first of all, it went through a jouissance, an orgasm that was not permanent, but almost permanent, an inner orgasm that was not projected at all on the outside. It was all the cells that deployed towards joy, towards reunions, difficult to find words, that went up towards the heart, and then there was laughter, then, that went up, that deployed, that needs to be expressed. It's as if this orgasm needs to flood the world, to wake up, there it is. But I also wanted to say that everything I am talking about, what's been experienced, is not a personal story. It's as if the history of humanity is passing through the body again to be completely liberated. And then, after this meeting with the whales, there was also the reunion with the masculine, with the embracing of the masculine, which allowed it to spread even further, and until yesterday when, well, I make shortcuts because so much has happened. Yesterday, there was something going up, I felt, I needed to express myself by the throat. And there was a call from the water, which was, I couldn't object to it, what? So there was the call of the water, and I don't know how, I found myself at the seaside, and taken by inner tremors. It was between jouissance and suffering, it was a mixture of the two, it was none of the above, it was, that needed to come out by the throat, by screams. Why, and what passed through, it started from the womb, it went up to the throat, and it was all the suffering of humanity, the separation. And all this happened through the body, because the separation is over, and, yes, it was the suffering of humanity to have been cut off, to have been separated, and all this is completely rising in the cells, in everyone's cells. The sails are up. All women can wake up, but also men, because we've all been men, we've all been women, and now it's all merging. And yesterday, there was a huge apology. There was the whale's call, where I had to be held back not to immerse myself totally and let myself go to the whale totally. And it was a forgiveness we make of each other, between men, between women, there are no victims, there are no executioners, there is none of that. Even if we have moved away from ourselves, we have gone outside to look for the woman, the man has gone to look for the woman has gone to look for the man, and there are many perverse games that have been set up, but we have nothing to do with it, we have absolutely nothing to do with it. And all this is happening, everything is happening, and whatever is telling us, what Jean-Luc has been telling us from the beginning, but he was just one wave ahead of us, and now, that's it. We're following him, and now, I can say, I see Ebba, I feel Ebba in me, and I became Ebba, as we are becoming everyone. And I never thought I'd be able to say something like that, by the way, but that's it, and I say it, and even beyond what happened yesterday, because well, it will continue today, and it continues in everyone and because all this is happening with everyone, and it's really not an individual story, and there is also that everything is unfolding in the sense that I see at each stage of my life, and I think it's for everyone like that. I see as small stones that have been sown so that we can find each other, and there, I find the stones one by one, everything gathers, to see that everything was planned, everything is decided, everything is already lived, for this moment, here, for these days that we all live together, for total liberation, to find who we are, and who we are is this great silence from which everything has sprung and everything is joining together, rewinding to zero, as Jean-Luc has always told us, so that we can all find ourselves in this great silence, where there is nothing left, where there is nothing left. Silence. As I wrote yesterday, I can only cry, but these cries are not, neither suffering nor joy, they are cries of gratitude, because yes, finally, the key is accepted, it is revealed, and indeed, one can only say, wow, it is so perfect, even the suffering is perfect. And besides, well, I'm not going to do the neuroscience thing to you, but we know full well that ecstasy and suffering are the same thing. Only the person sees a difference, but the brain doesn't. And that this is precisely the moment when there is no longer any possibility of difference, because it is happening now, whoever we are or whatever we have been. It is this acceptance and embrace, but it is already, above all, while embracing the other, it is also embracing oneself, whatever the stories, whatever the state today. Because of course, we have brothers and sisters who still live this suffering today, not because they do not live agape, they are patient, they have understood, they know that we should not hope, but simply embrace. But it is also for the collective, I call it the good news, what has been called the wide paradise, all these words that have been used, all these experiences that have been lived, and that have taken us away, literally transported to the heart of zero time. And you know very well that in zero time, there is no longer a man, there is no longer a woman, there is no longer good, there is no longer evil, there is no longer the game of life that is accepted, because the game of life, as I say, is only a game. Whatever the suffering, whatever the joy, whatever the abundance or deprivation, we can see today that there is no difference. It's by living it. Here, for example, I am talking about the neuroscientific level, the lack of difference between suffering and ecstasy, at the level of neuromediators. But here again, you have the demonstration that, I could have explained it to you before, even if it is accepted, validated on a physical level, as long as you have not lived it, it is useless. Today, you are living it, and today, we can finally reveal ourselves without prevarication and without transvestism, and today, finally, I will also be able to tell you what I am carrying, not here in this life, since it is only Ebba and everyone is Ebba, but this memory, who did not affect me, that is, being a man in this life, I could not suffer as countless sisters still speak about it today, not to have been recognized or to keep silent themselves, to be violent to themselves, because the time had not come. The time has come now. So obviously, it is you here, since for the moment the others are sending me their testimonies so that I can publish them. It is you yourselves who find yourselves, as Isabel said, even beyond Eber, even beyond Mary, even beyond creation. We have really, all of us have been through everything. That's why it becomes collective, and all the time it was individual. And yesterday we also had many testimonies that we read yesterday while we were walking, of those sisters who for 20 years, 30 years, had been carrying this good news. But the good news was being flouted. It was being flouted by what? Not by the life we were living, whatever that life may be, but by the scam of spirituality, the scam of energy, the scam of history, and the disease of consciousness. It is an act of healing. It is the good news, as I said, of zero time, which unfolds from every sacred space and heart. Some of them found their real name again last night, and I am going to leave Eliza, because she's not the only one. When she found her name again, I was just going to do the treatment sessions as I did to her every time, with the pumping of the skull and 3 steps, and then I was taken away. So I'm telling you what I've been through. I used to go there as a therapist. There, I wasn't even talking about love anymore. Eliza had to be helped since that accident. I believe that she incarnated, the poor one, in May, and she knows it through her life, today, and what she lived and what she endured all her life. In that life, I think she was the perfect illustration of this suffering in the flesh. She lived it in her body, she lived it in her soul. And so yesterday, while doing his care, I realized that what I had planned to do as usual, the movement that occurred, the word of the whale that came out calling it by its name, which is not Eliza, obviously triggering it, as by resonance on all the suffering of the earth that it has brought and illustrated through its experience, in this life. I don't need to know the details, I know it, and this suffering that has been carried since May, when she participated with us in these trips in naked consciousness, and when there was this terrible fear of this initial moment, she printed in her flesh, in her body, she was a witness to the suffering, but incarnate, and so many other women elsewhere. Now, I'm talking about the ones that are there, simply, and yesterday, this miracle happened, and she's not the only one who experienced it. Other sisters in Canada, for example, have found their names. And there's a very funny similarity, but I'll let you reveal that, because Canadians, they're sleeping there, but when they wake up and when they listen to this, they're going to cry, they can only cry. So, Eliza, let's hear it. Eliza. But I don't really know what to say, actually. It was amazing. It's coming, let's talk. Eliza. Well, actually, where I was there, and then you started calling me. And it's funny, because it was my name, I recognized it once, quite a few years ago, in Madrid. I really heard a voice calling me and calling me by that name, but I didn't remember it exactly. I knew there was an N and an E, but I couldn't reconstruct the name. And as soon as you said it, I remembered it, but more than a memory of memory, even mental, it was really my name. But I don't know what this name is due to and who this character is, if it's a character. Anyway, I recognized myself in that. I said, oh, well, that's it, it's coming back to me. It was very familiar. I said, but that's what my name is, not Eliza. My name is No Her. And all those who heard what happened after that I sent you at midnight, that you heard, that thing that came spontaneously. Eliza. Yes, and that language you were speaking was familiar to me, but without understanding. It is not an understanding, it is the word. Eliza. It was a familiar language, too. That's why, when you wonder what language it is, it's not a language. So, we can say that it is indeed the language of geneticist mothers at summer, but it predates that. Eliza. But it's because I had images that accompanied when you were talking, images that were very, very distant that, I can't even define them, but they were familiar to me and I would say very old, very old. Oh yes, it is the first breath of creation. I have always told you that the first creation took place on Earth, in Hawaii, the first Eden, not for nothing. Eliza. but it's like flashes that I've already had all my life here, but I've never been able to define them. It wasn't connected, just little bits and pieces. Eliza. Yes, and I couldn't define them, even transmit them, and there, it's like suddenly I was, or found something that was there, but that wasn't revealed. Who wasn't awake? Eliza. Revealed. And last night and tonight, you are not the only one who has experienced it. I was telling you about Canada, your name is no secret, but I would like to point out that other people have found not the same name, of course, but very similar names. You, for example, it's no her, you forgot the H by the way when you wrote it, because there is the H sucked in. Eliza. I didn't know how to spell it. No her. Eliza. But actually, I know how to pronounce it, know her, yes. Yes. And we have a sister who has also found her name. She felt called by the language there was, which was know her. Know her, know her, we have know her, all this is not by chance. All night long, I told you, I received the seeding codes, I talked all night, and now? Eliza. All night long, you didn't sleep much, so, I didn't sleep anything. Ha, it's the whole earth, it's about the whole earth. Eliza. I didn't sleep at all, but I was very well, actually, I knew. You look great. You look great. Eliza. Yes, yes, absolutely, I'm not sleepy right now. You won't be sleepy. Laughs. So, Simon. So, you two are talking to each other, it's very important. Simon. Actually, what comes to mind here is, with these names and all that, it's that last night, we all felt like we were Hawaii, when I was making music there. There were really dances like that and you said, ah, that's the water dance, Hawaiian women, they dance like that and, I have the impression that it must be related to that, because you said that in Hawaii, it was the first. The first Eden. Simon. First Eden, that's it. So I feel like that's what's being done, let's reconnect to that, shall we? That's it, that's all. And well, I'm very moved, I cry because all that, everything you tell me there, I carry it, I know it, and I haven't known it since today, I've known it for so long. As I told you, I have the memory of everything I have lived, not only in this cycle, but since the first cycle. I always said that Eba never created anything, but of course, I wasn't made to live that, not a day ago, not a year ago, but I lived it as a child. And all this, I had a chance, unlike many women, to be a man and especially to have an inherent ability not to be affected by the emotions, nor by mine, by those of others. And not to be affected, despite my intellect, by the mind, that is, a natural predisposition, whatever my mind says, not to be affected in consciousness by emotions, thoughts, mine like those of others. Moreover, when I was a doctor, I did not understand, while having understood, if you will, the mechanism of injuries, memories, not to be affected by it. This has allowed me to carry this memory that you have been discovering for the past 55 years, we will say. But as a man, in this body, in this life, not to have the suffering that you have all brought, ladies, to one degree or another, in your relationships, with the man, with the woman too, or as, with your daughter or with your mother. And today, that's why I'm moved, but in the noble sense of the word, I'm finally going to be able to tell you all about it. In the same way as what came out spontaneously yesterday, that is, the word of geneticist mothers, sown by the codes of creation, no longer the metatronic codes of the deployment of life, but which makes us find the first inspiration, the first breath, in the beginning was the word, that is what you find. And now that we are many in the dance, not only here, but everywhere, you saw yesterday everything that happened, again, I did not read everything this morning, which I would say will turn out the same way. and Fehuam, who will speak tonight at 6 p.m., on the eve of our meeting on the waters tomorrow, will unlock these last elements of memory, if you will, but which take place in the moment, from the myth of creation, the myth of duality, of polarity, where indeed joy and suffering meet in the same burst of laughter, through tears. That's the good news, that's the celebration of the four living beings. Remember that the four living beings surround the throne of the heavenly Jerusalem, where the Father is, in the Abba sense, not in the with Father sense, who leaves his place to each one, so that each one can see himself and be seen, have nothing more to hide, have nothing more to keep behind him, not our intimate, personal life, but what it reflects in our flesh. And so, it is the flesh that is released. Since, as I told you, the changes in the brain, in the consciousness itself, in the cells, this cellular phase is the information of zero time, that's the good news. Christ had told us during his ephemeral passage on earth that we would make much greater ones, but it is not to do so in the sense of demonstration, it is really the sense of sacrifice, or surrender. We reveal ourselves, we are no longer ashamed of suffering, we are no longer ashamed of distance, we are no longer ashamed of separation. There can no longer be any judgment of anything or anyone. There can only be embrace and, as has been said, I do not know by which of you yesterday, those who see and smell, you had the impression when you made a gate that a being was coming in and out, and he was washed by the blood of the Lamb, he washed his robes in the blood of the Lamb. That is what the last judgment, as they say, is, which is anything but a judgment, it is a restitution. This restitution, which is the good news, is total, and you are all going to feel, without exception, that you have felt, accompanied history, experienced vibrations, had visions, had suffering, all this is swept away by what is happening now. You wanted to talk again, I think? Eliza. Well, actually, no, I've always felt, it's a little embarrassing to say it, no, but the mother, the surrogate mother of, not the responsibility, but I don't know, the duty, I felt more like a mother than even a wife. I always prioritized mother, but mother of anyone. Well, yes, but that's normal, ladies. You are not only the mother of your children, this responsibility that has confined you to guilt. Eliza. Yes, exactly. You all know her. But today, it is the end of guilt, it is the end of responsibility, it is freedom. This does not take anything away from you in this role of personal mother or cosmic mother, but it magnifies it, there too, through all the suffering and violence. In other words, in the time that is available, you will be able to demonstrate your power as a mother, beyond your children, of course, beyond your mothers, your own mothers, and it will free you from the weight of guilt, because you all carry it, without any exception. Despite the vibration, despite the experiences, despite the states, it was not possible through the vibration, as I have always said, to lift this guilt, which is in fact a responsibility that has been diverted. Indeed, you're all mothers of humanity, but now in total freedom, without violence, without memory or experience, today. Yes, you are mothers, all of you, without exception, and that's what ends and forgives. It could not be done individually, many sisters expressed it in the testimonies, and then well, but I know you all, more or less, but I always see beyond images, shapes, and so on, always the same fundamental thing, it is this notion of responsibility, guilt, therefore. Because you can see that even in your life, with your children or your ancestors, especially in female lines, it could not be resolved. And today, as if by chance, you have noticed, moreover, as you had the example with your mother yesterday, your own mother, I have the example with my partner whom you know, who is much more than my partner, of course, and it is an incredible joy to see this sickly, really sick responsibility. You're not responsible for anything, ladies. Responsibility and guilt turn into embrace, because you have forgiven, because the good news spread yesterday, to a level you can't even imagine. The testimonies are coming in, there, since last night, you have seen, live and there, now, non-stop, from all over the world. Many brothers and sisters have made agape in trio, if I may say so, or in trio, in trinity. It has been done, I would say. I don't know how many copies, this thing. I've heard a lot about it, and that's the good news. You find what I called, and what LD, I, and so many others, have felt, since the morning of the 13th, but long before that, a few days before, since Christine had received, had been embraced through these codes and this word of mothers, which is not a language, which has no translation, because it does not go through the head, that the head is completely shunted, and there, yes, now, the good news can be given to the world, without blushing and without evasion. Because your embrace, ladies, no longer needs to take the slightest responsibility or guilt. This is what we have called this force that has since arrived, and moreover you have spoken of uterus, the womb as they say in octas, but uterus is ut, do, ed, ros, Uranus, Uranus, Mars, man. That is what is at stake, that is the conjunction of Mars and Uranus, which is nothing more than the simulacrum of the stars that, supposedly, are the planets that revolve around the Sun, and that you have an incredible power of resonance, having crossed, even without understanding it, since May last year and, I would say, from all eternity, the sufferings and everything. Today, you are beyond understanding, you are beyond the explanation of your own personal legend, which you have illustrated for many through suffering, but in any case, especially through this notion of responsibility, responsibility for children, responsibility for the family, and guilt, somewhere, that no longer has any reason to be, whatever your age is, whatever you have experienced. You can see that this is precisely what you have experienced, of intolerable, of the suffering brought by the female archetype. Here I am no longer talking about Mary, but I am talking about the female archetype, can only lead to this reconciliation. That is, the fusion of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, which had been called the primordial androgynous, that is, the 12th body which, today, comes out by the word. The mouth is open, you no longer speak in language, you emanate the word. And you noticed, moreover, yesterday I didn't understand why in the whale seeding codes, you noticed, each time there was this breath coming out, I had the impression of being the whale blowing the water, coming out of the water. That's the truth. So it is a space that has opened up, a space without time, or a time without space, if you will. It is the same thing, since time and space are connected, which offers you not redemption, but through you, freedom by, not the responsibility that was the only thing possible, but today, through embrace, that is, the sacred side of embrace, of the sacred vessel that is the female, through her sex that directly reaches her heart. That's why women, with the whale, experience this cosmic orgasm. As I told you, when I was 33 years old, I lived Christ's passion. It was happening in the middle of my chest, and nowhere else. It happens from the uterus, and it goes up. You're the matrix of life, but when I say you, I also include myself in it, because I will tell you the story, finally, initial, at the end of the Satsang, when you will have expressed everything you express. Eliza, do you have anything else to say? Eliza, I don't know, I have to assimilate all this quietly this morning. Simply, the word responsibility is replaced by embrace. You're embracing beings, you can only be embracing, but this embrace has been flouted, by the circumstances of life, not by karma with your child, your mother, your husband, but everyone was playing the game, the theater scene. So forget about the notion of guilt, responsibility. Eliza, yes, there are many things. I would even say, today, forget the word agape, because agape is important in the brain. I explained to you why, and even those who criticize agape, they have not understood anything. They do not live agape, whatever they say and whatever they do, even if they talk about Advait of Dainta, even if they've had lots of experiences, they do not know what it is. Not yet. Because of course, agape, as Martin Luther King said, is not only unconditional love, it is incarnating here the gift of God, the gift of the source, and the gift of the light. It has nothing to do with unconditional love. If we had to put a word into it, it wouldn't even be unconditional love. It's life, it's Ayoun, it's freedom, it's the paraclete, it's the impersonal, it's the conjunction of the stars and the ancients, not outside us, but inside us. So, it is not a concept, it is simply the truth of embracing, and the transcendence of embracing. Today, you'll have less and less difficulty opening your arms, as Severing said in her text, whatever you wear in this uterus, this matrix of life, it will express itself preferentially through the heart, which does not prevent you from having a sexual or other life if you are old, but it is so futile. As I was explaining, in some types of relationships, the genitals are nothing more than a connection point, if you plug in the plug. And in cosmic couples, because we live it, we do not need rites, rituals, techniques. In the end, one could say that it would even be enough to think about it for the orgasm to be there. But it is not an orgasm that spreads and disperses, it is an orgasm that gathers, that takes everything, and is therefore an embrace, the embrace of the true man, of the Son of Man, of Kristi, in it. So, indeed, it may be trivial as an image, but the sex of the man and the sex of the woman is just an electrical outlet. But we couldn't know it and live it, because everything was happening at that level. Some cosmic couples, some cosmic eggs, have been living since the beginning of their fusion, that it does not happen at the level of the organs. The organs, we plug in and then it happens here, it happens in the heart. And that's why, at the time, it was always said, even if it belongs to illusion and history, that cosmic couples, in quotation marks, whether it's carnal or not, doesn't make any difference, simply, don't see sacred sexuality or tantrism in it, even that, it seems completely irrelevant to me. It is simply a way to connect the power, the plug, the socket, like electricity. What happens when you plug in the socket of a lamp? The light goes on. And it happens, of course, at the heart level. And it is not only about this cosmic egg, this cosmic couple, which is also an illusion, somewhere, not in history, but for reality, it means nothing, but it makes it possible to recreate intimately and in a concrete way, therefore by the sexual act, which is no longer a sexual act, which is an act of giving and embracing, where the woman embraces, where the man gives himself, and at that moment, there is alchemy of the sacred masculine and feminine. Even the notion of sexuality doesn't mean anything, I told you, there is no drive, there is no desire, there is no need, it's a celebration. And this celebration, it takes place, of course, outside the organs, or so-called sexual attributes and, of course, it has repercussions on the whole of creation. Even if it seemed completely crazy or completely exaggerated to say that, it's the strict truth. Of course, the great advantage is that, as you know, there are very few representatives of this on earth, because now it is in each of us that it happens. Forgiveness, gift, embrace, realize that. That is the mystery of grace and good news. And it is no longer part of the first breath of creation, it is part of today, it is revealed today. And this is what makes you resonate and find yourself through the seeding codes that have been added to the word of geneticist mothers, which makes you find your noun, your elevation, your vibration, where it is no longer a question of responsibility and guilt, but only of giving and embracing, not just of the other, but of the whole creation. So you find, through this gift to the whole of creation, the so-called initial moment, which is timeless, it is zero time, where you conscientious and alive, through your flesh, the evolution, energy, roles, all that, is channeling, integral. You don't need anything but to embrace. You don't need anything but to let the gift be given. It's not your fault. There are no more breaks, there are no more limits, and so it is the freedom I was talking about, both internally and externally, to finally be ourselves, that is, to open our arms to every being that comes along. We even see it in couples who are separating at the moment, through testimonies, through couples who are reconciling, through mothers and their daughters. You'll see that all these relationships will be completely flattened out, and your mother or daughter will be your sister before being your mother or daughter. It has the same resonance, whatever the conflicts, and God knows there had been some. I didn't escape it either, with my mother. You know what it is like, perhaps, to have a Jewish mother, Martha Villalonga, multiplied by 10, who did not prevent love, but nevertheless created, let us say, discomforts, to be polite, in the relationship. And all this, today, it bursts in your face like, not just as a revelation of your personal history, but as a space of resolution and forgiveness, whatever it may have been experienced. In fact, you forgive yourself. And as Claire said yesterday, the man embraces, even if we don't always understand, we're available, and that was demonstrated yesterday when you suddenly decided that you had to go to the water's edge, you went to the water. And this is magic. It's magic because we live it. We no longer need time, space, concept or questioning. So we are more and more available. We are more and more here, man and woman, the receptacle of the divine, throughout humanity, through the 4 pillars. And at that moment, you live it, you see what is happening, whether it is the joys, the tears, the suffering, we're in the embracing. And this embrace can no longer present any condition of form, age or assumption, but all this, in a free manner. It is no longer, as you said yesterday, with responsibility, in the role of victim, executioner, savior, but in the total gift and total embracement. And this is resultary for your own body, not just for suffering, for healing. But it is not a healing that can be asked for, hoped for or waited for, it is a healing that unfolds on its own. Whatever the disabilities, whatever the limits of the body, the strength is there. And this force, it is free. That's why it's a force. It contains in itself both chaos, at the same time harmony, it contains in itself creation, decreation, dream, all dreams. It is not a personal matter, it is a collective history, where nothing can be excluded, neither men, nor women, nor minerals, nor the Hayat HaKadosh, moreover, they are there, nor the intergalactic confederation of the free worlds. I told you yesterday, the angel in dialogues with the angel, Uriel, said man is much larger than heaven and earth. So, at the time, it was necessary to understand it, during the World War and through suffering, through stories. Today, we do not need to understand it, as I have always said for a year and a half, live it and you will understand it afterwards. Feham released the last seeding codes, and I am not the only one to have received them. There are sisters who have received this language for a long time, but it was not effective. It caused terrible suffering, because there was a tear, as Feham said. Moreover, all the brothers and sisters who came to meet them before December, when they left, everyone felt this cosmic orgasm, but then there was a tear because it disappeared. Responsibility, guilt, all this is over. In the moment, if you embrace, you don't need vibrations, I told you, you don't need spramental, you don't need form, you don't need worlds, you don't need consciousness. Ultimately, we do not need a gape, since we are, and the best positioning is to have embraced, as Eliza said, your name, to have embraced the sowings of fame, which clothes you with your divinity and allows man to forgive himself. Because forgiveness is a gift, but as long as there was this wound, despite the end of the primary anomaly, despite the liberation of the earth, despite everything that happened last year, finds its actualization in your flesh today. Even in your personal history, as I said, you will find that all relationships, that is, the sense of being responsible for your children, for your husband, for everything, even through flight sometimes, because there are warriors among women, too, so you will laugh about it, and you will cry with joy, or suffering, but you will no longer make a difference. Because precisely, this guilt, this responsibility, no longer has any reason to be. That's what Time Zero is all about. Well, I thought I wasn't supposed to talk right now. Who's taking the microphone? Pierre, tell us a little something, you who were the transporter. Sisters, everyone was thinking of you. Laughs. Oh yes, 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 Pierre, you're going to put it in drawing, we know, but now, before you put it in drawing, and as you say yourself the drawing comes, put it in words, with your experience, since yesterday. Pierre. Okay, the guy, he draws. To avoid having to talk, laughs, he forgot his brushes, so, well, anyway, so you won't get the drawings live, it's a big Flynn. I have several, but I can't color them, so I can't publish them live, even though I was able to draw during some satsangs yesterday. Anyway, my experience, compared to yesterday, here, already, in the place where we are, there is Jean-Luc, of course, and there are 3 other men present. Well, there is one, whose guitar and voice leave no one in the dark about his name, there is Simon. And then we also have another male companion, and 2 seconds ago, it crossed my mind, it has a particular sound, which may have escaped some people, but not us on the spot. Let's say that from time to time, his body comes, in a factual way, his hands clap with a sharp blow and meet in a very loud noise. And 2.5 seconds ago, it reminded me of the Zen guides, in the Zen monasteries, when the Zazen students are sitting, and to avoid that they go too far into worlds, other than their bodies, because it must be in the body that the revelation is made, these monks have 2 soft sticks, that they hit, gently, but it makes a sound that slams on both shoulders of the aspirants who pray, and I find that there, it did that to me. I have the impression, Didier, because his name is Didier, that when you clap your hands, it comes back, Bem, it's like saying body, here, Bem, it goes back to that. Anyway. And then, it's not that, it's not me, it's what I've been experiencing for some time now, it's to be really the space of accompaniment and grounding, in relation to the female who lives her reintegration and all these daily upheavals. And I really have the impression that I am just an embracement space, at peace with the feminine in this male body, which allows women to offer themselves all legitimacy for all kinds. May everything be seen, may everything be expressed, as much what could be painful as what can be totally loving, without any more, or shame, as you said, or embarrassment, or restraint of anything. There you go. So, what I feel is a totally loving and totally embracing male from all the women who need to find themselves entirely. And, well, I feel like that, I feel like I'm in this space of, that's right. So, maybe a little dumb, but, laughs, extremely benevolent. And by the way, when you express that, keep the microphone, when you express that, you saw yesterday that you could draw. Because you brought your sheets of paper, and you forgot what? The brushes. You can't colorize. That's what made you transparent and available, the fact that you can't discern the colors, since you can't put them down, you don't have your brushes. There is the sketch, there is the drawing, but there is no longer any color, it comes out through your words, through your embrace. It was written that there should be no brushes, at least not during that period. And so, you said it yourself yesterday, you made the drawings, we see very well what is on your drawings, there is no color, you carry the color in you, that's what you are expressing right now, all the colors. And your own creation shows you that. Laughs, in the drawing you made of the cosmic egg, I showed you, there is the 3 in 1, there is one in the other, and one in front of the other that looks at each other and crosses and unifies. Pierre, that's right. Here, it is no longer a question of crossing from one to the other, it is the sacred masculine and feminine who marry each other. You embody it, without the need for representation. You will finish your drawings afterwards, of course, but you had to be available, not to color, in any way, that is to say to go beyond this human body, to embody the primordial androgynous, where there is no more coloring, where there is only the white paper and the drawing without color. You see, everything is written, you haven't decided it, everything is resonance in life. You lived it through the gift of yourself by accompanying it to the water, and you lived it through your drawings that you could not, in quotation marks, complete, that is, that you could not colorize. It works just as well in, I said it, in cooking, drawing, creating, it's the perfect illustration. We have also seen it with Simon, who, for a long time now, since I have known him, but now, through this strength that is there, through this sharing and this gift that we are experiencing, is becoming more and more important. The video game script is perfect. Perfect. And it will become more and more adjusted and more perfect, so that everything becomes not only sacred, but so that every minute, every look, every breath, every gesture, every event, even painful ones, will be a sacrament in the most noble sense. Do not see the sacrament of the Church. This is, in a way, the sacrament of our eternity, of our divinity. Your body is the expression of it, what you do, your gifts. Your gift as a draftsman shows you the same thing. Your musical gift allowed us to experience the same thing yesterday, when Simon, after all the tremors we experienced with this seeding of the word of geneticist mothers by the whale code, the white whale, was effective right away, here as everywhere, cries, tears, vibrations, but colossal, it is the body that trembles. If you tremble, it is because you recognize yourself. You do not recognize yourself, neither Jean-Luc, nor Eber, nor anything, nor the white whale. You recognize yourself, you vibrate, and you have embraced yourself. That is to say that the celebration of the four living beings, whatever the relief, whatever the suffering, today, shows you that you can embrace yourself in totality, as you can embrace the whole of creation. Not only through the absorption of essences, as many have already experienced, not only through the resonance of agape, but through instantaneous experience. And that at the moment when you discover in fact, that you are both this embrace and this total gift, whatever the sufferings, whatever the polarities between men and women, we reveal this together. It is a collective process now, and it will take all the spaces and all the time, and it is reparation of what is in fact illusory. So, reparation, the meaning of reparation, through giving and embracing, naturally puts an end, without question, to everything that is just passing through. And you discover, through this history of creation, which is now unfolding in its apparent origin, that the I have never moved, the eternal I, the fusion of being and non-being, and the person is being realized, there, since 3 days, since the 13th, and will unfold with as much majesty as possible, until 17 at midnight. And on February 18th, the availability of zero time, of this primordial information, will allow soul to live, whatever the vibratory anteriority, experiences, visions, sufferings, joy, to embrace each other collectively this time. Not by an act of agape, not by an act of intention of consciousness, but by the evidence of the eternal present, by the evidence that is imprinted in our flesh of this zero time, where the word, the famous 11th body, which is located on the upper lip, joins the 12th body, the primordial androgynt, what was called at the time, 2-3 years ago, conscious co-creation, the sacred feminine or the sacred masculine. We collectively become life, which no longer needs a path, which no longer needs a path, which no longer needs a path, which no longer needs to define truth. Because each of us is the truth, and the quantum entanglement of the collective dream, enclosed by the icons, no longer means anything, and at that moment we bring about reconciliation between, in history, what are called geneticist mothers, and the rape of the icons. It is in the etymological and real sense, the great forgiveness, a prerequisite for great silence and great joy, that you, ladies, express through this cosmic orgasm, and that we men, in our humanity as men, as Pierre described it, embraced you in totality. We embrace each other, we give each other peace, as in the parody of the church at the ash level, I give you my peace, you give me my peace, but who was at peace at the time? It is this peace that we experience, there, right now, in the instant, at every instant. Who is taking the word? Pierre. Just one last word, I'm sorry, before passing the baton on to someone. I just wanted to say that in the night emergency of last night, when Isabel had her requirement to rush into the water, here we are a small kilometer from the sea, on a high ground, and, well, when I immediately answered her request for assistance and taxi, I went to the car, and in the second, Simon followed suit, with his guitar, but he immediately followed suit to be present. And there, in the car, there was the holy trinity of Tarifalafs, going down the coast to the water. And really, we were, he and I, in the feet, in the ground, like a tube that came to take the ground, in a total embrace, of what, there, totally escaped our masculinity, but it was an absolute necessity, in front of everything that went through Isabel, and we were both there, to accompany her at every moment, when she came out screaming in that little lost beach where we hid so she could run to the water, when she took off her clothes, because it was unbearable to be anything but rough, well, in her essential nature, laughs, well, we were there, present, and in an inner serenity, of a total embrace, of everything that could take place, there again in three, there it was. Issa. And that's what allowed the whole process to go through. Without the presence of Peter and Simon, it wouldn't have been possible. No, the two of them, the man and the woman, must be together. It doesn't matter if it's platonic, sexual, who cares about that? To unite the two in one, to perform the miracle of one thing and then let an on-being, there is indeed a need for a man and a woman. What you expressed in your drawing. Peter. There, we needed to, considering the trick of crossing, laughing, we needed to. Laughs. Well, considering the power, yes, it took at least two, there. But well, there was both the mystical companion, both the child, and at the same time the father. And there, at that moment, when the three of you came down, through what happened, you were no longer a man, a woman, a child, a parent, a mother or a father, you were that unity of living, which cuts across all roles and functions. That is why today, I would like to say, for all those who are used to it, and I was the first one a while ago, to work with energy, with stories, with these notions of good and evil, you will not find anything through it, you will not find yourself. Lay down your arms, to want to know what is good, not good, good, bad, beautiful, not beautiful. As long as you stay there, you can't embrace. I am not even talking about agape, you can live it, agape, but you cannot embrace the gift of life in its entirety. Laughs. Peter. No, we didn't have a towel. Laughs. Eliza. Oh, I knew it. Laughs. Peter. But I had a plaid in my car, a beautiful blue plaid. Era. Laughs. Peter. In which I wrapped the whale when it came out of the water. Laughs. Water. Laughs. You see, that's Eliza's humor, who has always felt responsible for everything, who comes back at a gallop, but laughing. Did you have a towel? Laughs. Sister. So what really seemed to me, that came to me, from everything that happened yesterday, was really, through this suffering, this crossing of suffering and joy, it was the natural and evident embracing of everyone. What? That is, it was, we couldn't even think that something was going on, it was crazy what? Yes, you know, it's easy to say we're in each other. So we experienced it through the absorption of essences, with demons, with the brothers. There are some who are making appointments at this moment, of agape, but it is this personalization of individuals, at first, who believed they were. I told you afterwards, there is no one and we do it without anyone and with three of us, who creates the revelation of zero time, through giving and embracing, through spontaneity too. Sister. Yes, despite the strength of the suffering and joy that was enormous. It is a colossal force. You saw yesterday, ladies, when you were sitting there, as I let what was coming out of me express itself, that I had never let it express itself, because it was not the moment, and that I could not even recognize it, when severing, 2 or 3 years ago, had spoken the same language. For me, it meant nothing. In the same way that I couldn't recognize the music before was time, that's why I was made to deaf and sing wrong. Even as a kid, everyone used to laugh at me when I sang, because I couldn't hear right. If I had heard right, as a child, this was not the time, and then I would have carried all the suffering. I have not carried any suffering, of course, I have carried a lot of suffering in this body, because this body was suffering from various diseases, which no longer exist, but I have never suffered in spirit. I have gone through all the suffering of the body, to levels that no one can imagine here, because I am a doctor. Do not forget, and I know that the suffering I was experiencing, in a way, which was called periodic illness, was manifested once or twice a week all my life, with pain, to mean a scale, of peritonitis, therefore intolerable pain. But whoever, ever, except in the moment when it caused a high fever and a kind of delirium, but never, ever, derived from me an iota of what I had to follow. In fact, this famous video game, this script, which was always written, and that I actually had, not as a person or as a story, which had been written, if I can say so, at the initial moment, which is nothing other than the final moment. And you express it, you have been living it, for a few days now, each in his own way, but you all tell the same story, without exception, which can be summed up, as you have all expressed, as giving and embracing without even thinking about it, because you cannot do otherwise. When I said that I cannot do otherwise than to love, it is the strict truth, even the one who, there are still many who insult me, who treat me with what they want, I answer them, but I can only love you. I can't be in any way in the reaction, even if I wanted to. So, sometimes, of course, it explodes, but what explodes is a wave of love. It is not violence or anger, because power is there. And power is what? It is the power of the masculine, the power of the feminine, sacred, that work together. That's what time zero is all about. This is the moment when the double terrace, the one in the middle of the chest, there, which has one side coming out and one side coming in, meets at zero time. It is the moment when you live that whatever the past, whatever the suffering of the moment, or whatever the intensity of the joy of the moment, it leads you to exactly the same place and at the same time. This place and this time that are not, where time merges with space and annihilates each other, in a way. And I assure you that, in the same way that we asked last year for testimonies of resurrection, today, when you express this spontaneity of your experience, even though it is a group experience, but apparently personal, we all resonate with each other, and that we can only recognize each other in the few testimonies received yesterday, that you expressed, or that I received and that I published, well, we can only recognize each other. This is how we become aware, without effort and without technique, and without a gape at self, that we are this eternal I, beyond being and non-being, beyond appearing and beyond the person. There's no one there. And yet, we're indeed the receptacle, at the same time as the source of all life. We recognize each other, not only by saying I see you, not only by absorbing or merging the essences, but really by embracing and giving. And there, indeed, you can only dance, whether in tears or in exuberance, you can only dance the evidence of creation. And once again, whether through joys, through tears, through your body that suffers or no longer suffers, we can only let this natural emanate, that is, the ninth body I was talking about yesterday, or 2 days ago, this point that is located above the chakra of the heart, which was called the radiation of the divine when we were working on these bodies in the yoga of unity, comes every minute. You're in the natural and spontaneous radiation. It is the sacred heart of Christ, if you need an image, but it is also, for women, what you felt most yesterday, in the representations of the Marian archetype, where the rays come out of the hands. It is the posture for those who followed the yoga of unity and who practiced it at the time, the so-called Shafi posture. You remember, you tilt your head to the right while standing, with your feet, with your hands and arms unfolded at an angle in front of your body, and where the 10 rays come out of your hands, ladies. You saw it through Eldie's hands, but I am sure that if I touch the hands of all the ladies who are there, it will be the same thing, the same love that you express through your palms and your fingers. It's not magnetism, it's not energy, it's not vibrational. Your hand, which stretched out towards the sky, the YOD, has become the sacred vessel of the offering. You carry this life, this love, not only through the womb now, but through your hands. You're the effector agent of the sacred heart. And that, ladies, you'll have it in your hands. It is not magnetism, it is not electricity, it is not energy, it is not vibrational, it is pure love. You'll see, and we too, men, that's why I said that all those who made energy therapies, even luciferic, so by essence, will see their techniques deeply magnified by what is there, zero time, and what comes out of your hands. So don't see anything twisted in it. Christ said love each other, and I say to you today touch each other. You don't need intent, you don't need to want to heal anything, touch, touch. Hug each other, yes, of course, but just touch each other. We all have that in our hands today. There is no question of having a gift as a magnetizer, or a healer, or anything else. Your hands are the counselor, for yourselves, by the way. And besides, well, now, I can't get into a technique yet, but I'm just telling you, I'm just finishing up, what I was doing yesterday, when I did the care for Eliza, because it started at that moment, as if by chance, where she received her name, she recognized herself, but she's not the only one, there are others. It's going to be very funny by the way, but where I explained to you that this movement that I showed you there, with the hands compressing in 3 steps and releasing in 3 steps, you saw it, it was a crazy dance, that I'm unable to reproduce, that was done spontaneously, with my hands. Where the hands began to dance around the skull, pressing and releasing at the same time, each time, like that, you see, like a wave coming and going, and the same in the sense of decompression, that is, I was no longer in the static 3 times, it happened all by itself, I didn't look for anything, it was done on the rhythm of creation, that is, in 5 steps, what we call the 5 movements in Chinese medicine, the hub of the wheel. The 5 is the expression of creation, it is also the blessing, the Pope in the tarot. And that we all have in our hands. Whether you are sensitive to energies, vibrations or not, it does not change anything, it is the hand in its sacred aspect, the YOD. We had the wave of life, which has been rising since 2012, we had the reunification of the 2 flows of the wave of life, the 2 pillars of light, I told you, by crossing the ankles in a gape, hands in front of the chest, there you can open your hands, your heart is in your hands. But don't touch to heal, touch to touch. Sister. For love, what? In the true sense of the word. Christ said, who touched me? Now you're the one who's touching. And as soon as you touch, a brother, a flower, a musical instrument, earth, whatever, you're real. Because you are spontaneous, because you have no intention of helping, caring, in any responsibility, or authority, or any label as a therapist, magnetizer, healer or other. Life is in the hands now. So I won't make you the puns and the explanation of the script between your hands and now. Here and now, it's written, I told you, well, I took the example of the letter YOD, taking as an example that you have 5 fingers, 10 fingers with both hands. We used to say before that we had a transmitting hand, a receiving hand, you no longer need these conventions. Until now, you have touched with your eyes and smiles, in the street, spontaneously, but as soon as you use your hands, love will be and is in your hands. Dominic, come on. Dominic, yes, I was saying yesterday, with Isabel, well she was there and then she said I'm a little sore, she leaned a little like that, there was LD on one side and I on the other, we started, I put myself rather towards the sacrum, LD, she put herself up and then for 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour, we didn't stop touching her. Then, she danced under our hands, we felt that something was moving, and then it was so great. This touch, you did it spontaneously, you say it there, I saw you all touching each other, it was beautiful, because you no longer needed speeches, words, conventions, positioning, you no longer need to be in a role, or in a function. Incarnation, the emanation of love. That was yesterday, but I promise you it's never going to stop. I had the experience yesterday, and that's how it worked with Eliza. Sister. It's a dance, all the time. Who was written in a script, of course, because Alyssa and I had known each other for a long time, but I had never come before. Here she was leading her way, I was leading mine, she was coming from time to time, and now I am the one who came. Normal, because she cheated in the script, she cheated, she put herself in a form of impotence and impossible displacement, where she is forced to receive, she is forced to accept. Sister. But she does it very well, by the way. She played her part perfectly. And now there is no role. So, what I'm proposing now, it's noon, we've talked for 2 hours, I'll take a little break and then, spontaneously, laughs. There is Jacqueline, who puts us in dialogues with the angel on February 18, 1944, where he talks about the role of the hand. These synchronicities. Laughs. No, it goes very far. When I talk about the written script, there are some yesterday, I don't know if I published it, I listened to a delayed Satsang, and when she thinks of something, I don't know what, for example, the rose, I use the word pink, but it says, Sister, you're not live now, are you? No, I'm live right now, but I'm saying that someone who testified, who was listening to a delayed Satsang, was thinking about something, and at the same time, I said the words. There, someone puts us in dialogues with the angel for February 18, 1944, finally at the time of the dialogue with the angel, we will go and get him. Besides, it is the hand that speaks. Sister. Oh, that's wonderful. Laughs. Well, yes, you guys are wonderful. Laughs. I told you, I have. Sister. We are all wonderful, even men. Laughs. You won't be able to stop touching yourself. By the way, everyone is saying, here we are, hands are getting hot, hands are burning. So we take this break and then I'll let it go, I'll close my eyes, certainly, don't worry, and at noon, we'll say, I've got a little over an hour, but now it's 12:30, we'll resume and let the story of creation flow, the initial moment, you'll see. Thank you. Come on, I'll see you in half an hour. Thank you all. By Jean-Luc Ayoun. The Transformations. French transcript. Agape team. English translation. LMF.